Okay, so in this video, you'll be making a snail as a final kind of project for the sculpting unit. So you can Google cartoon snails. I'm going to create Gary from SpongeBob, but it doesn't really matter which kind of snail you do. The reason why I'm choosing a snail for us is I think it's kind of simple, but also complex at the same time. The only thing that I would avoid is if you're making your own snail, is I would avoid snails that have like open mouths. That kind of adds more complexity to it. But if you are confident with the sculpting tools, then go ahead. Yeah, so the first thing I want to do is I'm going to keep this reference. So I'm just going to save the image. Then with your Blender open, you can open the location of where your image is, go into the side view, and just drag and drop that image in there. So you always have the image in your Blender. The first thing we want to do is we want to create like a rough block out. So I'm going to create the eyes, the antler things here, I don't know what they're called, the shell, and also the body. So I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different objects. I'm going to choose a cylinder for the shell, kind of like that. With the thickness, so because we're creating a 3D object out of a 2D image, there's a lot to be interpreted, so a lot left for your imagination. For the body here, I'm going to use a cube. And then, because I resized the cube, I'm actually going to hit Control A and apply scale. Same with the cylinder. Control A, apply scale. Then, after I hit Control A, apply scale, then I'm going to hit Control 3, so it smooths out the corners, but maybe that did a little bit too much smoothing. So I'll go into Edit mode, and I'll add some loop cuts. And say that's kind of decent for the bottom. Then I just need the eyes. I can add a UV sphere, but I'm going to be a little bit fancy. I'm going to add a cube, and I'm going to hit Control 5. Then I'm going to go to my modifiers and then just apply the modifier. Resize it so it's about the same size as the eye. And now I need the little antlers. For that one, I'm just going to use the cylinder again. So I have the pieces, or actually, I'm going to bring that in so it's kind of tapered there. Okay, so I have my pieces, but the scale is all off, right? So sure, my scale of this one is decent. Maybe I can bring it down there. The eye, maybe should be up there. And this should be here. Okay, and this one I made a little bit too big. So I'm just going to move it so I get, about the same kind of dimensions. Okay. Then I have to line it up from the other angles too. You'll notice that I only have one eye made, and that's because I can now take this eye and apply a modifier, a mirror modifier. So it's currently mirroring the eyeball, but I want to use the shell as the midway point. So I'm going to get the eyedrop tool, select the shell. So now it's mirroring across this point. So this point is my middle, and it's mirroring across there. I don't want to mirror it this way, I want to mirror it this way. So I'll play around with it until I hit that. Okay. Same thing with the stem here. I want to mirror it around the shell. Okay, so I'm going to say that my block out is done. Obviously, I have to sculpt the details in. So I'm just going to save everything. And so now before I start sculpting, I want to make sure I apply all the modifiers. So this one has a modifier. So apply the modifier. So now when I press tab, I should actually see geometry, whereas before, I did not see geometry. I will actually keep the mirror modifier though. I will keep the mirror modifier, same with this one. And I also want to apply scale. So select your object, Control A, scale. Object, Control A, scale, scale, and scale. And one last thing that I'll do is this piece right here, I'll just move it up so it's not intersecting through. It just ends inside. Okay, so I'm ready to sculpt. It's kind of up to you of how you want to sculpt. I would say the eyes, in my case, are done, but at the end of the video, I'll show you how to do eyelids in case your snail that you're doing has eyelids. So really what I'm going to now do is just the shell here. So I'll go into sculpting, make sure my shell is selected actually before I go to sculpting. And then I need to add geometry, right? So press R, get it to around, like a decent density, and then Control R. And now the shell is symmetric, right? So the right side is the same thing as the left side. So I can enable my tool here. And you can test it out, right? Like, do I do X, Y, or Z? Well, in your case, it might be one of them. In my case, it's Z. Really, it's supposed to be Y, but I never applied rotation. That's why it's Z for me. Now you just start sculpting, smooth things out, get the general shapes in. We don't really care about the final product right now. We just want like a nice curve here because it's very curved. And maybe with the inflate tool, I can bring out the middle. So the middle is curved this way as well. So it's not just flat like it's flat here. I want it to be curved. And a lot of this will be like to your artistic interpretation of what Gary's shell should be in 3D. I suggest don't keep it simple, like his shell is simple, but I would say we're gonna go crazy with it. So even though like these pieces are flat, I'm actually going to create holes in his shell, but I'll do that later. I'm just focusing on the general shape, keep smoothing out and keep kind of moving things around. This bottom bit, I can just kind of extend more geometry. And the more I extend, the more pixely it becomes here. So if that keeps happening, right, like here I'm just exaggerating, it becomes more pixely. So in that case, I'm just going to hit Control R again. And I can smooth out as well. Okay, now the shape, I don't like the shape. His shape here is a little bit nicer than mine. I think I need to bring my shape up a little bit and then bring these sides in. And I think that looks a little bit better. Okay, and then one more thing I'm gonna do is now more of an artistic interpretation here. This part, for me, here, it's very flat. So I want to bring that out. So I get the inflate brush. You can even do clay strips. It doesn't really matter which brush you use. You use a brush that's comfortable for you or that you're comfortable with, and then just smooth it out. I'm holding down the shift key, that's the shortcut for smooth, but obviously you can go here and hit smooth. Okay, so it's a little bit more round, which is good, but then I'm like here, I kind of want it to be a hard crease. So for that, I do need to use the crease brush. And now I'm going to try to stay with this shape. Okay, and as you're creasing, your resolution will kind of mess up here because crease brush pretty much takes the vertices and kind of moves them together. So I can just hit Control R again and I just smooth this out a little bit. Okay, and the more detail you want to add, or like say I'm not a fan of how pixely this is, I can hit R and then remesh, bring the resolution even lower, and then Control R. And now when I smooth it, I have many more points to actually work with. So if I crease now, or I can even use the pinch tool here, it's going to be much smoother. I can even do here around his shell. I can pinch it a little bit and then save every so often, and always look from the sides, make sure that you get your silhouettes from everywhere looking good. Like here, this part right here is a little bit awkward, so I'm just going to inflate it there a little bit and then smooth it out. Okay, so all that I think remains is these little bits here. For that, you can kind of do something special, and that is to use a mask. So if I scroll down here and I press this mask thing, make sure it's the one that actually when you hover it, it says mask. We do not want to draw face sets. We do not want any of these. We want mask. And I'm just going to paint kind of circles like these. with the mask. Make sure the strength is all the way up as well. Okay, the nice thing about a mask, and you'll see what I'm doing with this soon, if I paint my shapes here, but I'm not a fan of this shape, it's too circular, then I can hit this minus sign and then kind of fix the shape. Or the shortcut also is Control. If I hit Control, that's going to invert. So I focus on creating my shapes first. Okay, the reason why I made my mask is, let me grab the move tool. So the grab tool here. If I was to make it big and grab it, it would grab everything but what is masked out. So I'm just going to undo that, and I'm going to hit Control I to invert my mask. And now all I have to do is just push these bobs in. Or if I don't want to push them in, I can just get the inflate brush and I can inflate it in. Either hold Control or set the sign here to negative. And then I'm just going to unmask everything. And so make sure everything is good how you want it. So now I unmask, so Alt M to unmask. And then I'm just going to remesh everything. And now I'm just going to gently smooth these corners here. Now I think the shell is finished. All I have to do is the body and the stems here, and then I'll also do like a quick eyelid as an example in case you're doing eyelids. So I'm going to switch to this object. There's a shortcut, like sure, I can go to layout, select it, then go back to sculpting. Or if I hold Alt Q and I hover over object, you'll see that they flash orange. That tells me what object I'm selecting. So from the shell, I want to do the body, so I'm going to hover over it, Alt Q. Now I have that selected. And again, press R, choose your resolution, Control R, and now we're going to start molding this. Oh, and you might get this error. So right here, because my brush was way too big, so when I try to paint here, it also paints underneath. So you really want to be careful with the size of the brush you choose. If that happens, you can just smooth it out, hopefully, and then inflate it back up. Or what you can do is you can also mask it out. So you can mask, I'm going to select mask, and then just select all of this bottom. Make sure I don't select this top bit as well. Now if I try to paint even with a big brush, it leaves the bottom alone. Okay, so I'm going to say that's okay for the body. And for the little stem things here, I think they're already decent, but I'm just going to change them up a little bit. Just with the inflate brush, I'm going to make them more kind of big at the top and more big at the bottom. Let's say that's good. And, you know, make sure you keep saving your stuff. And I guess I said I would do an eyelid just in case your snail has an eyelid. So for an eyelid, all I'm going to do is I'm going to take the eye, I'm going to duplicate it. So now I have two things on top of each other. Into sculpt mode. And then I'm just going to get the inflate brush and inflate the top bit here. And here, if I want to go from the other side, so I cannot see through this, I can just hit the slash on your number pad. Oh, I guess that doesn't get rid of it. That just gets rid of everything else. So you can hit slash on your number pad again to see everything else. Then I'll just go into my modifiers and I'll say I don't want to see it right now. Oh, but I also see the modifier of the other one. So the eyeball here, I also don't want to see that one. Okay. And again, I'll select the eyelid. Okay, and maybe I'll add like a crease here. So I'll do another layer. So looking at this, I pretty much have an eye here, an eyelid here, but the eyelid also has an eye. I don't really want this bit, right? Because I want to maybe move my eyelid without the iris moving. That we'll do later. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look from the side, go into sculpting. Actually, I'm just going to isolate the eyelid, and I want to get rid of all this. I can use this box trim, and I can just select this bottom bit and be like, hey, go make it go away, and that makes it go away. And so when I unhide everything, I can make the eyelid a little bit bigger so there's no clipping here. Okay, so boom, eyelid. Okay, then I can bring back the mirrors, the mirror modifiers, so I can see what I have. So that's it for part 1, and there's a few more parts to get it to the finished product. So yeah, that's it.